allow us to take the worldly things from our minds, that you'll open up our hearts and our minds to the words being spoken, that may allow us to gain knowledge. And with this knowledge, Father, may we'll gain wisdom, which in turn, Father, will let our light shine in your kingdom. Forgive us of our sins. Be with us as we go through our class. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. While Johnny Wayne gets it going, we're going to get started. Our class, basically, it's not who, it's whom do we belong to. You ever think about who owns you? Look around. You're owned by the person you serve. God told us we can either serve God or we can serve manna. You're not going to serve both. So we're going to look at Philippians, the 3rd chapter this morning. That was basically the question that was asked Paul. We still don't have it going, but we will. Do you ever ask someone, who's your daddy? We've seen people, and I know that's a funny thing going on, but we ask that when we see someone. Do you know why? We're not able to tell. Basically, that's the question that was asked Paul. Who owns you? Where do you come from? We need to live our life so there's no doubt. When someone sees us, they're not asking, who do you belong to? Because we've seen people that live a life when you look at them and say, we know what they're doing. They belong to Satan. Or we see people says they're religious enough that we see God's light through their life. Okay, this sort of brings us to where we're headed. We're going to look at the first 10 verses of Philippians 3. It says, we're going to look at the first 2 verses first. It says, further, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. It is no trouble for me to write the same thing to you again, and it is a safeguard for you. Watch out for those dogs, those evildoers whose mutilation of the flesh. Now, the question is asked, and that's what we've looked at through all of Philippians. How do we rejoice in the Lord when facing trials? Hard question, but an easy one to answer. Because you look beyond the trial you're going through right now, and you look at the reward that is going to benefit you at some time. All of Revelations was given to people to understand you're going through trials, you're going through tribulations, you're going through everything you're going to be facing, but in the end, the reward is greater than the trials you're going through. So that's how we rejoice. Now, the word rejoice is in the present tense, and that's a continual rejoicing. That's what he's saying. He's not just saying rejoice once. He says rejoice. Keep going. Notice Paul made a significant addition. Rejoice in the Lord. Perhaps Paul's point was that no matter what tragedy might fall them, the Philippians were in the Lord, therefore always had reason to rejoice. The theme over and over and over in the Bible. Rejoice in the Lord, because the reward you're going to receive is greater than the trials and tribulations you're going through. Johnny Wayne. Would you tell Johnny it's not clicking, Jim? Okay, let me get me going again. Paul says to write the same thing again is no trouble. So In this, he made the comment, he's writing to them again. Now, you have to remember, they didn't have a telephone. He couldn't text them, he couldn't call them. So the only communication Paul had with them was either through letters or through someone to voice what he wanted. So no doubt that he had written these same issues again. So, thanks, Johnny. Paul may have been referring to a previous letter in which he had discussed similar topics. So we know he's wrote them before, he's discussed some of these. Paul may have been referring to the words that preceded the statement, rejoice in the Lord. Paul did not repeating that admonition. Do you ever think about how many times we repeat things and it's for a reason? Paul may have been referring to the words that would follow, beware of dogs. There's all kind of problems that's going on throughout the world. Some of these things is happening to the Philippian brothers that Paul is addressing. Whatever Paul's point of reference was, at least we can learn this. Repetition of a basic truth is not bad. Now think about it. What if you could only be told the way to salvation one time? That would be scary, wouldn't it?
Well, you forget.
You forget.
We need to be, and I'll tell you something else. The reason that I like to hear sermons and classes on basic salvation is because it reminds me that I made the right choice.
And that's what Paul's doing. He's trying to tell the Philippian brothers, you're on the right course. So by repeating it over and over, they're able to steer their course because he's continuing telling them. Now, we know that some people complain, don't keep telling us the same old truths. We want to hear something new and different. Paul had anticipated this would happen. Now listen to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 and 4. It says, for the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears wants to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to the myths. How many new denominations have crept up and started in the last 10 years? I guarantee you 20 years ago there was basically 5 or 6 religions in Jonesboro. And I'm going to talk about Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, Presbyterian, all of these. Now you look and there's probably 20 to 30. Why? Itching ears. People want to feel good. They want to feel like they're a part of something. Tim and I talked to someone one time, a Church of Christ person, and was going to the Baptist church, and he said, I get to do stuff there. I can sing a solo. I can do this. I can do that. And we asked him the question, how much effort did you put in your worship when you went to church? Shook his head and he couldn't tell. Well, a couple of weeks later, this person rededicated his life and lived that way till he died. But sometimes we have to be careful of change. I mean, we have so many congregations today that are struggling because of music, because of women preaching, women praying. That's going against what God had established. Why? People like to hear that. People like to feel good. And Paul's telling them that's not the important thing. What did he tell them? Beware of dogs. That's what he called the people that was lying to him. Now, we got to understand, Paul marks a shift in tone here. He's sort of talking, then he says, beware of dogs. He had been focusing on people he loved. Now he turned his attention to those who would harm them. Even though Paul loved them, he was warning them with love, like a parent warns their child if it's in danger. How many times do you tell a child when they're little, stay away from the stove, you're going to burn yourself? You don't tell them one at 6 months and forget, do you? No. Because they need to be reinforced over and over and over. So Paul's warning them. Now, most scholars think these were Judaizing teachers. They were Jews who had become Christians, but still held on to the law of Moses and taught that Christians needed to embrace Judaism. That's like taking someone that was converted from being of the Catholic religion and coming in and saying, well, we're going to do this, but we're going to have fathers and priests and popes and cardinals, but we're going to worship God this way. They're changing the fact of what God wanted. So let's look at how Paul addressed this. The whole question of circumcision came up again. Now, this had been brought up years before, discussed. The apostles talked about it and put it to bed. It was over, they thought. You know, it's like what's going through today. Back in the 40s and 50s, instrumental music come up. It was debated. It was over. Everybody thought it was put to bed. Now it has come up again, and it's stronger this time than before. So you still have to address those same problems over and over. Now, look at this. The exact word, dog, that Paul was talking about were not pets. They were like a rabid dog. Now, this was the same word that the Jews called the Gentiles. You go back and you look, and what did the Jews call Gentiles? Dogs. They were worthless people. Paul turns that around, and he uses the same term for the Judaizing teachers. He said, you're just like the dog that you call the Gentiles. Now, there's a little bit more. Paul went on to say, beware of false circumcision. These Judaizing teachers were teaching that the people at Philippi, the males needed to be circumcised to where they could address and be closer to God because they're following what the Jewish religion thought they ought to. Now, Paul addressed the false circumcision. In the original text, false circumcision is a play on words. Paul used a different preposition, changing cut around to cut down. Circumcision basically means cut around the foreskin. Paul used the word cut down. So basically, he changed the word and its meaning of circumcision and of cutting around to body mutilation. He says, you are forcing a body mutilation on the people that want to be a Christian. Now, in Philippians 3:3, he says, for if we who are the circumcision, we who serve God by the Spirit, whose boast in Christ Jesus and who put no confidence in the flesh. Paul was stating a fact. Now, listen to what he says here, that we Christians are the true Jews, the true children of God. Now, when he's saying it this way, what were the Jews? They were God's chosen people. What are the Christians? God's chosen people. So he's using it in a text that we, in your eyes of what you say are true Jews, we are the Jews that you're talking about, but we're Christians. This is what Paul told the Romans, Romans 2:28 and 29. A person is not a Jew who is only outwardly, nor is circumcision merely outward and physical. No, a person is a Jew who is one inwardly, and circumcision is circumcision of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the written code. Such a person's praise is not from other people, but from God. How is baptism a circumcision of the heart? It's cutting away the filth, the sins from your life, that you now become fresh before God, following the covenant made to Abraham. Circumcision was a sign of the covenant relationship given to Abraham and his descendants. So you could tell you were of the covenant of Abraham. How could a male show this? Circumcision. How do we show today that we are of the covenant of Abraham? Circumcision of the heart. Baptism. Our relationship with God is now. The Christians are God's covenant people. It was hard for these people to understand that, being a Jew. They wanted to be a Christian, but they didn't want to give up that ownership of being a Jew.
Well, they saw it as a two-step. The Jewish people saw it as a two-step. You become a Jew, and then you become a Christian. And they said to the Gentiles, you have to become a Jew.
First.
Yeah, and then. But Paul said, no, it's not a two-step process.
That's right. It is a one step. Now, Paul lists his three characteristics of true circumcision. One, we worship in the Spirit of God, and that's in John 4. You glory in Christ Jesus, and that's John 17. And you put no confidence in the flesh, and that's Philippians 3 and 3. And he's saying the flesh covenant is nothing. It's now all about the Spirit. So he's putting to rest one more time the issue that had come up time and time again from Judaizing teachers. Philippians 3, 4 through 10. Now, the question come up about them being real highfalutin Jews. We know more because we're of this pedigree of Jews. Paul says, now, if you want to talk about being a Jew, let me tell you something. In Philippians 3, 4 through 10, though I myself have reason for such confidence, if someone else thinks they have reason to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Now, this is what Paul's telling them. I was circumcised on the 8th day, entered into a covenant by what the covenant says. Of the people of Israel, he was born a Jew, a Pharisee, one of the highest sect of the Jews. Of the tribe of Benjamin, most of those Jews could not even tell what tribe they come from because that lineage had been lost. A Hebrew of Hebrews. In regards to the law, a Pharisee, as for zeal, he said, now let me tell you about me as a Jew. I persecuted the church. As for righteousness based on the law, faultless. He said, you can find no fault in me being a Jew. He said, now You want to tell me about being a Jew? Let me tell you. Paul's saying, I'm the King of Kings when it comes to Jews. Now, listen to what I have to say. But whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss. For the sake of Christ, what is more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For those for whose sake I have lost all things, I consider them garbage, that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ. The righteousness that comes from God on the basics of faith. I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participate in his suffering, becoming like him in his death. Paul said, now I have this pedigree. I have this. He's telling how important he was. Verse 3 tells exactly who he was. He was a man of integrity in the Jewish sense. Now, what Paul then points out to him, he says, everything that I have being a man of Jewish descendants is nothing. There's no reason to have any confidence in who this person is. He said, it can't get me anything. That's like saying, because I'm a Pace, or I'm a Bassing, or I'm a Hickman, I am greater than anyone here. That name has nothing to do with anything other than saying, I'm a citizen of the United States. What does that mean? Same thing some 6 million other people get to say.
That'd be like the same thing with if you were a Christian here in the United States or a Christian in Romania. You're not better than the Christian in Romania just because you're a Christian.
That's right. The Christian, as Danny said, whether you're in Romania or Honduras or Black Oak, are all the same in God's eyes. We're all equal.
Well, in verse 6, he said he was blameless. I mean, that speaks volumes right there. That doesn't mean he was saying I'm sinless, but if the law required something, if he did mess up, he went to the priest and he went through the process of atonement at the altar. He did that, and therefore he was blameless.
So, yeah, Paul, if you didn't hear that, Paul said, under the law, the old law, I was blameless. Anything that I had did, everything I had done, I corrected if it needed to be corrected. You could not find anything to find fault in me.
That's why he was such a persecutor of the church.
That's right.
But he goes on to tell them, that don't mean a thing.
He said, that's worthless. I mean, that's the exact words. He says, what advantage was given to me to have what I just explained to you? He called it a waste of time. I mean, that would be like all of the accomplishments I have accomplished in life. Look, Sam Walton, look at Trump. Look at all these people who have accomplished everything in the world. He said, that's nothing. That's a waste of time if you're not a Christian. People need to understand the only thing we need to get out of this pilgrimage is a ticket to heaven. And we can't buy that ticket. It's got to be given to us by the life we live. Look at verse 8. Paul made the comment, knowing Christ surpasses any accomplishments he ever achieved. So, everyone sitting here today who's a Christian, that surpassed anything you'll ever do on this earth. Ever. Paul gave up everything. Now notice, he gave up everything gladly to follow Jesus, because he called everything else rubbish. He said, all of that wasn't worth anything. Now, verse 9, Paul did not want to just know Christ. He wanted to be found in him. There's a lot of people that knows Jesus, but they're not found in him. How do we be found in him? Go back to what he said. You got to be circumcised of the heart. You got to give yourself. You got to be obedient. You got to give up everything you have in your life. Now, I mean, he's not saying you got to just give up, but you got to give up ownership of all of these things you've accomplished in your life, to give that ownership to God. Not who, but whom. The one thing that's the most important is, who do you belong to? Verse 10, when Paul speaks of knowing Christ, he desired to have the closest relationship with the Lord. He wanted more than to know him. He wanted to be owned by him. Paul is teaching ownership of who owns him. When someone asks Paul, who's your daddy? He's going to say, God. Look at my life, and who I represent, who I worship, is who I belong to. I have ownership on this earth, but I count that rubbish to give my ownership to God. We end it all by saying exactly what Paul said. Who owns you? Don't tell me, show me. Live a life that your light shines, that someone doesn't have to ask, who's your daddy? They can look at your life and say, oh, you serve God, don't you? So hopefully we've learned some things about problems that was going on, how Paul addressed it. But the problem all ended up by one way and one way only. Give up all earthly possessions. Give your life to God. And you're going to receive a reward, and you can rejoice always in the Lord.
And the deal is, okay, how do I get in the covenant? That's what he's asking.
That's right.
How do I, and you addressed that a while ago, how do I get in this covenant? Because nothing matters if you're not in that covenant.
That's right. You've got to get in the covenant.